Okay, cool. We're live. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Transform Tales podcast. I am your host, Brooke Addis, here on behalf of Transform Labs. Today, yet again, we are going to discuss I already lost my train of thought. Sorry. Let me start over there. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Transform Tales. My name is Brooke Addis of Transform Labs, and today we are going to talk about the impact of transformation in someone's life. A very interesting life, might I add. And today I have with me a special guest who has a long history of extraordinary sales experience, has lived a lot of life, and is working on her first book, which I've seen some snippets and I'm very excited about. Amy, will you please tell everyone about yourself?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this today. This is my first podcast. So this is a net new for me. After 30 years in tech sales, working for some of the largest companies out there, I took a sabbatical last year and then pivoted to launch my own consulting company. Veta Sales Consulting is my organization. We focus on leadership, coaching, and go-to-market strategy, but we do so in a really unique way by leveraging psychometric analysis to really get to the core of people to determine, what they are made of, and to help them kind of use that true self to really become successful in every aspect of their lives. And so it's been an interesting journey, and I really enjoy the opportunity to just get out there and kind of talk about people and what makes them tick.
Since coming into this new way of learning about other people, from your own perspective, when you took this Aptive Index exam, did you learn more about yourself as a leader and someone with an experience in leading teams and sales?
I did, actually. It was interesting because I spent a good portion of my life as an individual contributor and then pivoted into leadership. And it was something I always knew that I wanted to do. But for a lot of reasons, I waited or hesitated to take those moves. And what the index has taught me is that I'm really driven by leading other people. I'm driven by helping people become the best next version of themselves. So that just kind of, it prompted me to say I probably should have moved into that role a lot earlier. And then it also showed me that I'm very emotionally connected to the people that I work with. And that I have that empathy and that EQ. And that also helps in leadership. It doesn't mean everyone has to have that, but really for me, it gives me the ability to really see inside someone else and kind of pull out those aspects. So I look back at the career and the mentors and the people that helped me, and I realized that those that were really successful and beneficial to me were the ones that could do the same thing.
I absolutely love that. And as someone who has firsthand experience working with you, and I've now taken the Aptive Index twice, I have learned a lot about myself. Things have changed. And I think it made it easier for us to work together because you had more insight to me as a human being and like in the role that I serve, but also a bigger picture of what drives me, where the weaknesses are, things that like I excel at, that you're able to boost to the next level with your insights and experience, which I truly appreciate. And I want to say thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
Yes. I have to ask everyone this question. I think it's so fun, such a good jumping off point. When you look back on your life and you think about where you are today, when you were maybe like 7 or 8, was this your dream? Is this what you thought you'd be doing?
No, it's really interesting to me because I was 6 years old when I said, I want to be a lawyer.
Okay.
It's exactly what I want to do. And I went all in. I did everything from that time. So I was a first grader through high school to really just fuel that dream. Internships, and I read, and I even watching silly legal dramas. I was all in. That was my dream. And when I went to college, I went on an English scholarship, and with the intent that was going to help me, get into law school and go where I wanted to go. And a series of different obstacles came forth, and I started taking business classes, and still with the intent to go to law school. So it wasn't until I got into a horrible car accident that my law school dreams were kind of derailed. They were delayed. And I went out into the working world And I started working for some attorneys, and I was miserable. And I had loved all of the internships and everything I had learned and all the people I'd met, but I really just was disillusioned. And I got this phenomenal message from a gentleman that was of counsel with the firm. He sat me down for lunch one day and he said, being a lawyer and being in sales are the exact same thing. He said, you're either selling a product or you're selling a story. And he goes, your problem is you don't believe in the story you're selling today. And he goes, that's why you're unhappy. He said, if you can find a product that you really believe in, that you can get behind, you'll be unstoppable. And I look back at that and I think he's not wrong. Everybody in every profession is really selling in some way. But you've got to, for me, I had to believe in it. And so when I went out and kind of looked at pharmaceutical and medical and technical, technology sales. And in 1996, when I made that pivot into sales, which feels like an utter lifetime ago, people thought I was crazy. They were like, oh, technology, nobody's going to do that. And that's, there's no future there. And
Little did they know.
I mean, I guess my crystal ball worked really well because it's been a really fun ride.
I know we have talked about it slightly, but your very first role in technology sales, was it one you applied for? Did you plan on it? How'd you fall into that?
So my very first, I sold telecommunications, which really wasn't tech. I sold that. I sold long distance.
Do we put a link somewhere so people who are born in 2000 know
know what long distance is? And my job it was business to business. I went into, high rises and I'd walk business to business and go in and try to do an analysis of their bills to show them how we could save money. No joke. That was my first foray into sales.
Okay.
And then I didn't want to stay in that area and I started talking to people and I got a job which I was making phenomenal money as a young 20-some. And I pivoted into a role of inside sales for a small integrator selling, and we'll have to put an asterisk, Deck Alphas and IBM IntelliStations and HP Kayaks to engineers, leveraging Pro-E and AutoCAD. And people are probably like, what is she talking about? But that was my next role. And I met several individuals who are still in my life today.
So cool.
From that role. But they paid me so little money that I had to go back in the evenings to tending bar just to pay my rent. And the best story is that I got my next role from behind the bar. So because I had learned so much about technology, two guys were sitting at the bar one night. I started having a detailed conversation with one of them. The other one was super grumpy. And
not in sales ever. I couldn't see it.
It was Lent. He was on a progressive fast. He was down to bread and water. He was really hungry.
Okay.
And 2 hours they sat there at the bar. At the end of the 2 hours, he goes to pay the bill, and he looked at me and he said, okay, what do you really do? He goes, because you already know more about tech than most of the people who work for me. He gave me an enormous tip and his business card, and he said he had 6 jobs open and that he wanted me to take one of them. And that was my next role. That's how I got my first field sales role. And that launched my career. So, he changed the trajectory of my life. And
it's cool to think about little snippets like that. Like you were just doing your job to make sure your rent was paid, that you could eat.
So I could eat.
Yeah, so you could eat.
Little things.
The small, just nothing major, nothing that makes you sustain your life. Do you think there is a tie to working in a service industry and being successful in sales?
100%. I spent 7 years working as a waitress or a bartender while I was doing other things, whether it was going to school or even when I was working in professional sales positions. And it is the best training ground ever for salespeople because you have to be, outgoing and learn to communicate, which is key, right? You have to be organized. You have to be hardworking. You have to be able to deal with conflict. That was always very interesting because as much as I'd like to say everyone was always happy when they came into whatever establishment, they're not. Mm-hmm. And so there were so many skills that, I both learned or honed from from those years. And it just, I look for that. I look for people who have that service worker background because it changes the mentality. And there's some people who to this day I met, like I said, while I was either the waitress or the bartender, that are still part of my life. And because we were able to build that relationship. And I tell everybody, especially today, relationships mean everything.
Oh,
and
yes.
It is a relationship game out there, and it is how we differentiate ourselves. And when I'm coaching, when I'm creating go-to-market, in the way we sold in 1996 to the way we sold in 2000 to the way we sold in 2020, it's different. And the way we sell today, if you aren't building that relationship, if you're not going out there and showing value outside of the product or service that you're selling, just as who you are, you're missing the boat.
I would totally agree. And I know that you already know this about me, but in a past life, I also worked in the service industry for, just like a decade.
Yeah.
So I'm sure when you saw my resume, well, let me back up. I was not blessed to have you a part of my hiring process.
I was not.
But later, I was very fortunate that the company Transform Labs brought Veta on to help grow our sales team, and we're moving into new markets this fall. So very exciting. But now that you know me, if you were a part of that, would seeing that experience have affected, before I took the Aptive Index, your opinions?
Yeah, actually, it's really interesting because I tell people frequently resumes are relics.
Love.
However, and they are. There are people who have done roles for 5, 10, 15, 20 years that doesn't mean that they're the right fit for those roles. They continuously get jobs because they've had those jobs. But at their core, they're not in the right role. Mm-hmm. And they're either staying in it because they think that there's money to be had, or they don't want to change, or they don't want to pivot, or they're scared. But they're a lot of times unhappy. And if you're unhappy, you're not going to be good at anything, or you're not going to be fulfilled, right? But yet, looking at resumes and looking at that diversity, I look at yours. I think about a gentleman that I hired in a previous role who had military and police experience before he came into sales. And we hired him into a public sector role, and he just had the ability to really bring validity to his message because he was so well respected. He had this unique background and mm-hmm. this unique persona. And I know leaders who would not have hired him because he didn't have the pedigree that they were looking for. But no, the service experience, it's just a unique qualifier that I think people miss out on.
I do think it says something how you were saying all the skills that you can check off or hone when you're in those roles. I think back to myself as a young leader in that space, and definitely lacking patience, which I'm still working on in some aspects as a professional. But I would challenge people who were older than me because it's like the tenure versus talent conversation. Be like, well, this is just how we do it. And that's so frustrating to hear when you see, because you haven't been there for 10 years or a different perspective. So let's talk about after you got out of that first role. You were obviously, your career happened in a different time than is today. I feel like life pre-2020 and after 2020 are very different.
Right.
What got you into your next role? Did you decide to apply somewhere else? Were you looking? What happened?
Yeah, so the first role I worked for a partner organization and learned a lot. Got a chance to really, build those skills that I needed. And I learned a lot about technology, but I was always over my goal, and I was building a reputation. And so the next role I actually got recruited into, I had recruiters calling me saying that they were
on the phone.
Yes.
With their voice.
With their voice.
Not a text message.
They didn't exist back then.
Not a LinkedIn message. Oh, that didn't exist either. Okay. Whoa. All right.
So it was really funny because I had gotten a phone call one day, and he said, I'm really interested in putting you up for this role with this company called Network Associates. And I didn't even know what Network Associates was. And so I went and I sat down with him and I spoke, and it was a combination of Magic, McAfee, PGP, and Sniffer, which were these 4 companies that had come together. And people knew it as McAfee. They knew antivirus.
The red. I picture the red.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, it's a vendor role, and I went in and interviewed, and and during the interview process, got to meet all of these different executives and talk to them. And I remember not wanting to give away what I had been making previously, and so I just kind of sat through the process. And again, I was over goal for the last 2 years. And they give me my offer letter, and my base salary is more than I had made from my commission. And I said, oh, I don't know. I'm not sure that that's enough to encourage me to make the switch. And so they gave me more. And I thought, okay, well, I absolutely can negotiate.
Yep.
And so I got into that role. It was an interesting, I covered a huge swath of the country. And so I was on the road. I would leave on Mondays and come home on Fridays. And I was flying everywhere. The irony is prior to that, I'd been on an airplane maybe 3 times. And I flew 1 million air miles in 5 years with that company.
Do you get a plaque for that? Like, what is, are you like a United or whatever airline it was club member? That's so funny. Okay.
It was crazy. But the vice president who hired me sat me down one day, and he said, I want you to stay in nice hotels. I want you to fly good airlines. I want you to drive a nice rental car. He said, but I never want you to eat alone, which is funny because that's the name of a book, right?
That we both enjoy.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I would have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with either customers or partners or colleagues, so that I was always on the road. I was figuring this out. And yeah, I was a road warrior, and I actually loved it. I was energized by being in front of these people. But I think back and think about the challenges of being a road warrior back in, 1998. We still used paper maps.
Yeah. The airport was probably easier to navigate. No, way less security.
There was way less security there. You didn't get all of the benefits of like the clubs. And now they were starting. I was a very early adopter of the American Airlines Club, because that was the airline that we flew the most at that point in time. But it was just getting out and building and learning. And so I loved that role. I made club every year I was eligible. I traveled. And so not only did I travel for work, but then I got to fly to, we went to Monaco as a club trip. That's incredible. And Puerto Rico and Hawaii. I mean, it was an amazing experience. I had my best boss ever during that time, and she was empowering and exciting. And
did you hear that? She.
And she would have and she did define herself as a pit bull with lipstick, which was always very funny to me.
I love that.
Just a big person. She was even smaller than I am, but she was a big personality, but just very encouraging. And I like to say, she kind of helped, again, create that trajectory for me and that confidence to build that career. I loved that role. I would have stayed in that role. I left it because I gave birth to my son, and I thought possibly I might want to see him.
Sometimes.
Twice.
You spent 9 months in there, so you might.
Yeah. And it was a different time. I mean, I had a 2-week maternity leave.
It's like 6 months now.
There was no maternity leave. I took a 2-week vacation.
Okay.
And then I was supposed to take some time off and come back and take some time off. And for a variety of reasons, that didn't happen. Mm-hmm. So I literally had 2 weeks and then changed jobs. I left and I went to work for Microsoft.
Never heard of them. Good for you for putting that name out there for them.
When my son was 5 weeks old.
Just had a baby, have a 5-week-old. You're starting a new job.
Starting a new job. And
okay,
I do not recommend that for a lot of reasons. But I went there. It was one of the shortest tenures I had. And then I was recruited and I went to Cisco, and I was there for more than a decade. And that, some of the people in my life that provided me with just guidance and growth, good and bad, were in that role. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably, if I take anything away from all the big companies I've worked for and from what I look to do now, is that you are never going to be everyone's cup of tea. You're just not. And there were times in which I tried to diminish who I was to fit into the mold that they wanted me to. Generally speaking, when I walked into most companies, there weren't a lot of women. And I've had more female bosses than I ever thought would be possible. And some of them were fabulous and some of them weren't. And I've had great male bosses and I've had bad male bosses. So I don't look at it from a gender perspective. But coming in when you're really the only woman in the room, whether it's you're the only woman in the room when you're selling, or whether you're the only woman in the room when you're part of the team, it does provide some unique challenges. And I had to learn to grow a thicker skin, and I had to learn to not take a lot of the feedback to heart, because you find that when you're getting treated poorly or someone's bullying you, it's usually more about them than it is about you.
That's great insight.
And it was a hard lesson to learn, right? As I continued through that path, and just some of the challenges that you had to overcome. But my goal is always to learn something from everything I do. And look, I am not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, and I have not made all the right decisions, and I have not picked the right path each time. I know now that I should have gone into leadership earlier, and I should have bet on myself that way. I thought I would make less money. I thought I would limit myself in some capacity. And I'm so energized by helping other people that's just part of my DNA.
Is that energy that you felt what led to the idea of Veda? Because obviously you're still working in the tech world, and then COVID happens.
Yes.
So how did that impact you, and how did it end up in 2024 sabbatical? Let's do it myself.
Yeah, I got an opportunity to go work for Twilio in 2019, and they had been reaching out to me for a couple of years.
Okay.
They started really building a field sales force in 2017, and they had been a self-service company prior to that. So they'd been around a long time, but it was really, you put down your credit card and started to build and develop. And it was a developer's platform. And in 2017, they decided that because of the size and scope of some of their clients, that they wanted to build a sales team. And they started hiring people I knew that I really respected.
Oh, wow.
And these individuals called me and they're like, you need to come on board. We're really interested in having you join the team. And I was very risk averse at that moment. I thought, I'm in a good position with Cisco. I'm making good money. I'm making my number. I'm getting opportunities to participate in a lot of leadership areas. And finally one day I thought, you know what, if I'm probably going to regret this, but I'm going to take a chance and go. And I was in a leadership role when I left Cisco, and I went back to an IC role, an individual contributor. But when I went through the interview process, and the interview process was hilarious because it spanned many more months than I expected, just partially because of me, because I was trying to close some deals and I was trying to delay when my start was going to be. But my last interview with the VP, when he offered me the job, I had literally had surgery 2 days before. So I'm on a video call with him. I have a cast from my bicep to my fingertips on my dominant hand. So someone had come over and put makeup on me and brushed my hair because I couldn't do it. And I'm in this interview, and he said to me, what happened? We're about 3/4 of the way through the interview. And I said, I had surgery 2 days ago. And he stopped, and this pause comes in, and he goes, did you say 2 days ago? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It's good. We're fine. And all of a sudden he stopped again, and he said, okay, I'm done interviewing you. And I thought, I messed up. And he goes, we're going to hire you because that's crazy. And I said to him, well, that's fantastic. I'd love to join the team. I go, but so we're clear, I want to be a leader. And I said, I'm going to take this role as an IC, but I need you to know I want to go into leadership. And I just put it out there. I had 4 promotions in 3 years. I went from an IC to a team lead to a regional sales manager to the senior director of sales in that period. And within months of me joining the team, COVID happened. So we did this all remote.
Wow.
And Twilio really just exploded during COVID because people needed the ability to communicate. And we really had a unique offering, and we built out these really cool solutions and ideas for people to be able to really continue their business no matter where people sat, over the channels that they wanted to. And I just, it gave me an opportunity to do different roles in different areas, different parts of the country. In the end, I was covering all of North America.
Just the whole thing?
Just the whole thing.
Okay.
Including Canada, and bouncing back and forth and on a plane again all the time, which again, I loved, and just kind of building that up. And so when it all ended, and it ended because, Twilio went through a bunch of layoffs, and I had survived the first 3 rounds, and then round 4 came and they eliminated our division. It ended up being a blessing. And at the time, I wouldn't have said that. At the time, I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
The whole world was saying that, though, too.
Yes, and they were. But it gave me a chance to restructure my whole life. I relocated to Columbus, Ohio. I got a chance to launch my son into adulthood. I was able to take a sabbatical, and it was the first time in 3 decades that I had more than 2 weeks off in a row.
Deserved. Well deserved.
I tell people it was my delayed maternity leave.
Fair.
Just took, 19 years to get it, or 20 years or whatever it was at that point. But, during that time, I'm a big hiker, and I went and climbed Banff and the Grand Tetons, and did some hikes in Southern Ohio, and we have a cabin, and I helped do the remodeling of it. There's a lot of clarity comes when you are swinging a sledgehammer and taking down walls and using a saw to cut up old tubs. It's very interesting.
And a good workout.
It's a fantastic workout, and it's very therapeutic. And so I took that time and did those things, and I had an opportunity to start to speak to companies and talk to them about their go-to-market strategy and their hiring and their compensation plans, and just variety of different things that I'd been involved in my career. And I was lucky enough that someone very close to me said, just do that, but maybe get paid for it. And so I took a step back, and I was probably the most scared I've ever been to think, can I really do this on my own? Can I really launch this company? And I talked to what I consider my unofficial board of directors, and people were so excited by the concept. And I thought, okay, I can do it. And I launched Veta. So Veta is special to me because the word is Italian, and it means summit, top peak summit, which is what I want to help people do. I want to help them reach their summit and reach that level of success. It's important to me because I am a big hiker, and so it kind of fed into that part of my personality. And then, it was different and unique, and my ego is just not that big. I could not name a company after myself. So that was a lot of fun, and just kind of building that out. But when I packed up and moved my life to Ohio, I found all of these journals that I had scribbled in. And again, remember, I was an English major, so I'm a nerd.
Lots of writing.
And I like to write, and I like to read. And so I found all these stories that I had crafted about my life during these past 30 years of sales. And instead of getting rid of them, because I purged my whole life at that point, I was like, I wonder if I could write this into a book. And so that's where the book came from. It came from all these journals and all these little snippets and stories and just meanderings that had happened in my life. And I kind of just started to write out the story. And so I get teased that it's my memoir and that, am I really important enough to have that? But I tried to weave it into a series of lessons. And the way I look at it is, whether you are new thinking you want to go into sales, man or woman, or you've been in it for a long time, but you haven't decided to take that chance on yourself, or you're not in sales at all and you're interested in kind of the concept of overcoming obstacles. It's all in there. And I I have no problem making fun of myself. There are some really funny stories. A little snippet from there. When I first started as a reseller, we were selling Cisco. And I remember sitting down with this client, and she gave me this laundry list of things that she needed. And so I drove back to the office, and I got on the computer, and I started to build out the quote. And then I got to the end. I spent a very long time kind of going through the price books and figuring it all out. I couldn't figure out this one line item. And so I paged, it's very important to the story, my engineer to call me back because I had a very important question. And so he calls me back, and I said to him, I go, hey, I didn't realize we sold furniture. I'm like, so where do I find that? I can't find it anywhere on the price book. And he just starts laughing. And I waited. I'm like, okay, it must be really simple and right here.
It's on the first page probably. Yeah.
Yeah. And he goes, what are you looking for? And I said, a crossover table. And he laughed, and he goes, you're an idiot. It's a cable. It's how the switches interconnect. And I thought, that makes so much more sense, because she wanted a lot of those.
Putting tables up.
I was like, I wasn't sure where we were going to put all these tables. To this day, when I see him, he still makes fun of me. And that was a really long time ago. But it's hilarious. I'm like, I had no idea, because for everything I had learned, and back then, when you were learning, the internet wasn't released yet. I mean, you were reading books, you were talking to people. I didn't know. So that's in there. I make fun of myself. I'm like, complete and utter. I mean, thank God he was on the phone and didn't see how red my face had become. But you have to, it's growing past that and realizing that, okay, that mistake I won't ever make again. And I didn't. And when I went to Cisco later on, I still told that story when I was out in front of customers, our clients, because they thought it was funny. And it was an icebreaker.
It also shows you're human, which I think sometimes does get lost in the tech space, especially like in this day and age with how things change so quickly and rapidly, and every other conversation is about artificial intelligence. It's nice to know that humans still play a role in the process, which is really good. I typically ask people if technology has hindered or been a catalyst to their career. I feel like your answer is very evident that it's been a catalyst, but I do want to ask, as technology has changed and you were in these different roles, what was I don't know if it's the hardest part or the biggest challenge that came with all the changes that rolled out?
For me, I was always very driven to sell what was on the cutting edge.
Okay.
So for me, I could have laid back and done the easy thing. And I was always looking for what was going to help clients the most, but really what was on the edge. So, when I was at Network Associates, the sniffer product was really cool and new. And they were luggables. That was like a 40, 50-pound device that you had to carry around.
That's crazy.
It was insane.
It's like the big phone that was in the cars.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, when it was the Apple, it was the first Apple we sold was the Molar Mac, which was hilarious. That was a 60-pound device that I had to carry into companies to show. I like to think that the reason that I've stayed so fit is because I had to carry things that were so much bigger than I probably should have. By the way, to put that into perspective, the MacBook I carry today weighs 2.7 pounds. So they've made them a little smaller these days. But then when I was at Cisco, instead of just selling switches and routers and wireless access points, I got into collaboration, and then I got into UCS, which is the servers that just kind of displaced Dell and a lot of the existing hardware that was out there. And then we got into the hypervisors. And so I was always trying to do what was new and inventive because I wanted to provide a solution and not just a product. And part of that was because and I think this is the key in sales, is that if you go in and you've got, I'm going to sell you X, Y, and Z, you're going to miss the boat. It's got to be, yes, I have this whole laundry list of things that I can provide, but tell me about you. Tell me about your business. Tell me about your business needs. Tell me where you find challenges. And it's more about listening than it is ever about talking. And that for me, Brooke, is the funniest thing, because when people say to me, oh, I can talk to anybody so I can be in sales. And I'm like, can you really? Because can you listen?
Power of the pause.
Right. The power of the pause. People who don't know how to listen are never going to be successful at sales. They may be influential. They may be able to regurgitate some sales pitch, but they're going to be inauthentic. And that authenticity comes from being able to show up as your real self, but also to listen and understand what those people really need. And I think that's what we're seeing again in today's market with a lot of people going out and becoming experts and advisors and trusted advisors. That concept is not about what can I do for you. It's about what do you need, and then how can I help, whether I can provide it or I can bring in somebody else to provide it. And again, that's just authentic and real, and where the differentiation is really made.
That's also what's going to drive the future if we all want to see success in all these, pivotal things that are happening. We're talking about technology governance changing in spaces we've never been in. That sort of collaboration and respect to tell someone like, hey, I'm not for you, but I do have a trusted partner is, yeah, that's monumental.
So it's not just the relationship with the client, it's the relationship with your community that you're building, and being able to understand who you're engaging into those environments. Because I don't want to bring somebody in that I don't trust. That's my reputation.
Yeah.
And so I've been very, very lucky to build a really good network before I launched Veta and since of key people. And like you said, the partnership I have with Aptive Index and what I'm able to do with the assessments, Jason Carroll and I have gone out there and really just been able to tell a story that didn't exist before. It's just, and how that's changing the conversation. And then, the people that we work with that are doing the HR work and the technology work, like Transform does, and the, different marketers or finance people. I ended up graduating from college with a degree in accounting and in English.
That you obviously use every day.
I don't ever want anyone to think that I could do their taxes or, I can work my own spreadsheets, but to do that role. So I really respect when I bring in people who understand those different nuances, because they're skills, and it's that trust and that relationship. So relationship, key to everything. Just building that trusted bond.
I appreciate you reiterating that with the hands.
Yeah.
That was good. Love. Well, this has been incredible. And I have to ask. Mm-hmm. You've been an individual contributor. You've led teams. You are now a founder. Mm-hmm. How has success changed when you look back when you were, hey, I'm behind a bar and now I'm making it big time, to like today? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I grew up very humble beginnings, and it made me really want to be successful. And when I was younger, I looked at success in terms of money.
Okay.
I needed to make a certain amount of money so that I could have things that I didn't have before. When I look at success now, it's about how fulfilled am I, and what do I get to do with my life that makes me happy every day. Part of that is working with people like you that I really just love watching you grow, and just, you're just going to set the world on fire. And I know that, and it's exciting to me. And then it's about being able to live my life on my terms, the way I want to do it. So founding Veta, I can work from anywhere. So if that means that I take some time and go do a hike, or take the crazy canines for a walk, or, I can do that. Money, life is easier with money than without. I know, I've lived it both ways, but that isn't my ultimate goal anymore. And it was when I was younger. I wanted to be as successful as I could be. I wanted to make as much money. I wanted all the accolades. And now I look at it and I look at it from how fulfilled am I? How happy am I? How much is this bringing back to my relationships and to kind of how I want to live my life? And that's what drives me today. And
That's incredible. The switch is great. It's also funny if you look at it from like a very high level. It's a shift of like your work life balance, because you were talking about when you started out, you have a second job. You're working nights and you're worried about, am I having a peanut butter sandwich today, or are we just eating dinner, or are we having nothing and hopefully someone has a water fountain, to today where, like, let's take a hike, let's take the dogs out, let's travel.
yeah, I mean, when I started out, and I was first in tech sales and I was working that second job, I worked 80 hours a week. And it was, I mean, there wasn't a lot of me time. And now, I look at it and think, okay, I was just talking to someone I really respect today, and we were talking about hiking, and she's like, oh, do you think maybe in August you could come out to Utah and we could do a couple of hikes? And I thought, I wonder if I can fit that into my schedule, right? It's just a different shift. It's a different perspective. And again, I like nice things. But that drive is more about the experience, not the thing anymore. And I think that comes with maturity. That to realize that life is a series of experiences. It's a series of relationships. And I tell people frequently, as I've gotten older, the people my trusted group is smaller. I'd rather have 4 quarters than 100 pennies.
I love that.
And I look at that in every aspect. It's all about quality versus quantity for me.
That's so insightful. Again, I, on a personal level, want to thank you for the ways that you helped me. And I appreciate my company for supporting me by bringing someone like you on that can help accelerate my growth and us as a firm. And I'm really excited for Veta. I can't wait to hopefully have a 1-year anniversary party, and the book. So not to put you on the spot, speaking of the book, maybe by the time this episode's like edited and developed, is there going to be possibly like a snippet or like a 1 chapter you're going to be able to,
it's, I feel really comfortable with where it's at. I need a name.
Okay.
I've gone through a series of names on it, and then I have to decide how I want to publish it. So again, that's a learning stage for me, and I'm looking right now, do I want to self-publish? Do I want to go through, a really well-known publisher? Do I want to use publishers that I know other people who I trust and respect have used? So I'm trying to figure that part out. And that for me is really interesting because, again, it's just another learning experience. Mm-hmm. But yes, there could always be a little piece. And I've let a few trusted people read portions or all of it. I'm sure it needs one more solid edit.
Okay.
But I'm excited about it. It's definitely something that I'm going to do. I had some really positive feedback yesterday about doing it as well.
Which I love. From someone that I also greatly respect, and I'm glad you guys were able to meet. Well, I really appreciate you being here with me. We are live in Pittsburgh today. Thank you for coming to the Berg, all the way from C-Bus.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting thoughts for anyone who's listening right now or might be thinking about their sales career?
Yeah, I think that the biggest thing I can tell you is take the risk, believe in yourself, and don't be afraid to, take the promotion, take the role, get out in front of the client. Nobody's going to believe in you more than you believe in yourself, and you need to be your best advocate. And I think that's the biggest part of it is, if you can have that trust and belief and faith in yourself, then you're going to be unstoppable. And that's what I want people to realize and embrace. And then the second part is, just because you did something for a long time in the past doesn't mean that has to be your future. That taking that chance on yourself can be anything. You don't have to pivot to running a consulting company. You could pivot to being a chef. You could pivot to being an author. You could pivot to anything.
Very insightful. Great closing words. Thank you so much. Amy, again, thank you for being here. Everyone, that's a wrap on another episode of the Transform Tales. I hope this discussion has inspired you and it will make you consider the transformations in your own life. I am Brooke Addis, reminding you that your next chapter might be your very best. Keep evolving.
Thank you.
That was great.